Do not listen to the knocks at night. The Red Door, a short horror story. Emma moved into a cheap old house at the edge of town, hoping silence would help her forget everything she had been running from. At first it felt perfect. Empty rooms, long hallways, no neighbors close enough to hear her if she screamed. But on the first night at exactly 3 in the morning, she heard it. Knock, knock, knock. It came from the wall beside her bed. She froze, waiting for it to stop. It did not. The second night it happened again, louder this time. And after the knocking came something worse. A whisper, pressed right up against the plaster. Someone breathing through the wall, trying to speak without being heard. During the day she checked everything. Outside there was nothing behind that wall. No extension. No hidden room. Just the open drop to the yard below. So there should have been nowhere for a voice to come from. On the third night she stayed awake, staring at the wall with a hammer in her hands. The house creaked around her like it was waiting too. At 3 in the morning, the knocking returned, faster, angry. Then the sound of scratching, dragging downwards like fingernails carving through wood that should not exist. Emma struck the wall. Plaster shattered, wood splintered, and behind it was a door. Red, perfectly painted, too clean for the rest of the house. She did not remember painting it. She did not remember it ever being there. Still, when she touched the handle, it turned. The door opened into a hallway that should not have fit inside the house. It stretched too far, longer than the building itself. Wallpaper faded with age lined the walls covered in framed photos. Emma stepped inside. Every picture showed her, smiling in places she had never been, standing beside people she did not know, wearing clothes from different decades. In one photo she was older, in another she was already dead. At the far end of the hallway stood an old woman in a white nightgown. She smiled like she had been waiting for years. "You always come back," the woman whispered. The hallway stretched longer as she spoke, the walls slowly pulling away as if the house was breathing. Emma ran back to the red door, slamming it shut, dragging furniture in front of it, heart pounding so hard she thought it might give her away. By morning, the wall was normal again. No door, no hallway, no damage. She almost convinced herself it was a dream, until she saw the photos in the house. Every single one had changed. Emma was gone, and the old woman was standing in her place, smiling wider every time Emma looked away. That night, 3 knocks came from inside the room she was standing in. Not the wall, the air itself. If you hear knocking where there should be nothing, you are already inside the story. Don't turn the lights off after this. The Night Caller, a short horror story. Liam had always lived alone, but he never really minded it until the night. The phone started ringing at exactly 7:11 a.m. The first time he ignored it, thinking it was a wrong number. But the call came again the next night at the exact same time, and again the night after that. On the 4th night he finally answered. There was silence for a few seconds, then a breath on the other end, slow, wet, close, like whoever was calling was standing right behind him instead of miles away. Then a voice whispered, "I can see you now." Liam sat up, frozen, staring into the dark of his apartment. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. But the phone was still pressed to his ear, and the breathing didn't stop. He hung up, but the phone rang again immediately this time. He didn't answer it instead. He checked every room in his apartment, locking doors, turning on lights, telling himself it was a prank, or a glitch, or something explainable. At 3 a.m. the next night, his television turned on by itself. It showed a live feed of his own bedroom from a corner he couldn't see. On the screen, he was asleep, but something was sitting at the end of his bed. Watching him breathe, he ran to the bedroom. But when he opened the door, it was empty. The TV behind him still showed the figure sitting there, except now it was gone from the screen too. The phone rang again. This time, the display showed his own number calling him. Against every instinct, he answered. There was a long pause. Then the voice came back, closer than before, almost like it was inside his head. "You keep looking in the wrong places." Liam turned slowly toward the hallway mirror. In the reflection, he was still standing there, phone in hand, but behind him, In the mirror world, another version of him was already smiling. The real Liam dropped the phone and ran, but every mirror in the apartment now showed the same thing, his reflection standing still, watching, waiting, and then all of them started tapping from the inside of the glass. At Sendentling AM, the call stopped because now they didn't need the phone anymore. If you ever hear your own number calling you, do not answer. It is already too late. Don't fall asleep while reading this. The Apartment with No Number, a short horror story. Daniel moved into apartment 6B because it was cheap, quiet, and no one else seemed to want it. The landlord handed him the key without looking up. Just don't ask about the floor above you, he said. Daniel laughed it off. At first, everything felt normal, too normal. The hallway lights always buzzed at exactly the same intensity. The elevator always arrived instantly. And every night at exactly 3 o'clock, he heard footsteps above his ceiling. Not loud, not heavy, just pacing, back and forth, like someone measuring the room. On the third night, he asked his neighbor about it. She went silent for a long moment, then said, "There is no floor above us." Daniel assumed she was joking, but that night he stood in the hallway and looked up at the ceiling, and he realized something that made his stomach drop. There were no doors on the floor above, no lights, no vents, nothing. Still, the footsteps continued. On the fifth night, exactly at 3 o'clock, the elevator opened by itself. No one inside, just a soft light coming from the back wall. Daniel stepped in. The doors closed without impressing anything. The elevator did not go down. It went up, higher than the top floor button, higher than the building should allow, until it stopped with a soft bell. The doors opened, and there was a hallway. But it wasn't part of the building. The wallpaper was old and peeling. The air smelled like damp wood, and every door was numbered incorrectly. T-A, Ba-A, Joel-A. Then one door with no number at all. At the end of the hallway, standing perfectly still, was a man facing the wall. He was tall, too tall for the ceiling. He wasn't moving, but Daniel could hear him breathing, slow, steady, waiting. Then the man spoke without turning around. "You finally took the elevator." Daniel tried to step back, but the elevator doors were gone. Just a wall now. The man slowly turned his head, but not his body. Only his neck twisted. Too far, too wrong. And Daniel realized something worse. The man's face looked exactly like him. The hallway lights flickered, and all the doors at once started unlocking from the inside. Every clock in the hallway struck 3 o'clock at the same time. But Daniel's phone showed something different. It read 3:06 a.m., except the extra minute wasn't time. It was delay, like reality hadn't caught up yet. The man smiled and said, "You're the one who's been upstairs this whole time." The lights went out, and somewhere below, in apartment 6B, someone else was now standing in Daniel's room, hearing footsteps above the ceiling. Don't try to find the floor that doesn't exist. Don't read this if you live alone. The door that was not there, a short horror story. Mason started noticing small things first. The kind of things you ignore because they feel too pointless to matter. His keys would be in his pocket but already hanging on the hook. His bedroom light would be off but warm like it had been on for hours. And every night at exactly 3:12 a.m., he would hear a soft knock from inside his apartment. Not on the door. From the walls. Knock, knock. Then silence. He told himself it was the building settling. Old pipes, neighbors, anything that made sense. But the knocks started changing. They got closer. On the 5th night, the knocking came from behind his bed. On the 6th night, it came from inside his closet. On the 7th night, it came from right beside his ear while he was awake. Mason finally decided to check every inch of his apartment. He moved furniture, tapped walls, pressed his ear to every surface until his head hurt. Nothing. No hollow spaces, no pipes where the sound could travel, just solid brick and drywall. That night he stayed awake on purpose. Lights on, door locked, sitting in the middle of his living room. At exactly 3:12 a.m. the knocking came again, but this time it was different. It wasn't in one place. It was everywhere, at once. Every wall, every corner, even the ceiling, all knocking in perfect rhythm. Knock, knock, knock. Mason stood up slowly and realized something that made his stomach turn. The knocking wasn't coming from outside the walls anymore. It was coming from the inside of the room itself, like the apartment was not a container anymore, but something that had been opened. Then the lights flickered, and when they came back on, there was a door in his living room that had never been there before. Old wood, deep scratches down the frame, no handle on his side, just a keyhole, and something breathing softly on the other side. Mason backed away, but the door stayed exactly where it was, as if it had always belonged there. He called the landlord. No answer. He called emergency services. The line was already busy with static. Then his phone rang immediately after. Unknown number. He answered without thinking, and heard his own voice on the other end. Come. Close. Too close. You checked everywhere except where it started. Mason looked at the new door. The wood creaked. Slowly, from the inside, the door began to unlock itself. The knob on his side finally appeared. He never remembered touching it, but his hand was already on the handle. Turning, pulling, opening, and as the door swung inward, he saw his apartment from the other side. Empty, perfectly clean, waiting, and something that looked exactly like him standing inside, smiling back. The phone dropped. The line went dead, and Mason realized too late. He was the one who had been knocking all along. Don't open a door that appears after the knocking starts.